Welcome to Relate Higher, a podcast dedicated to providing the leading standard in conscious higher relating and to teaching you a conscious framework for all of your relationships. This is your go-to resource for developing meaningful, conscious relationships across your life. I'm your host, award-winning relationship coach and consultant and former family lawyer, Letitia Ringe. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome back to the podcast, my friends. Today we are talking about how to start and practice a conscious relationship with another person in your life. So in our previous episodes in this first series on the podcast, we've been exploring everything to do with conscious relationship. By now you understand what a conscious relationship is, and you know that to be in conscious relationship, this requires you to create and approach your relationship from love, with awareness, and with intention. We've discussed how this shows up in the 12 conscious relationship principles, and we've also discussed how you can enter into conscious relationship today without any other person needing to do anything but yourself. In this episode, we're exploring how we invite other people into a conscious relationship with ourselves. And we'll be exploring this most predominantly in the context of romantic relationships, but we'll also be covering friendships, family relationships, and professional relationships. So in the context of romantic relationships, it's really important to understand that you can be in a conscious relationship with the person that you're in a romantic partnership with, whether you're in a relationship right now together, or perhaps you're starting a new relationship together. Maybe you're dating right now, or maybe you are completing a relationship, or even deciding whether to leave a relationship. No matter where you are in the overarching cycle, you can approach every phase of the romantic relationship consciously, and you can step into and choose to be in conscious relationship with the other person. What this means is you will approach that phase of the relationship from love as best as you can, rather than the default conditioning around fear. Now, when we're in an existing relationship, when we are completing a relationship, when we're healing from a completion, when we're dating, there can be a lot of fear that comes up automatically and by default about your relationship and the person that you're in the relationship with. This is because when it comes to romantic partnerships, we have the most conditioning and also the most role modeling from the moment that we're born with our caregivers. And so for a lot of us, there is this innate fear that unless the person is going to be with you forever and love you in the way that you need, there will be fear that is being triggered. And interestingly, what happens is our protective patterns that we've learned since we were a child to try and get our needs met become the very patterns that block these desires from actually being filled by your partner, because you kind of make it impossible for them to do that. For instance, you might want more connection with them, but the way that you're showing up in the relationship is actually from a place of disconnection. You're waiting for them to show you, to prove to you that they will love you and be committed to you and meet all of your needs, rather than actually recognizing that it's not about the person that you're relating with, and it's not about moving from a place of protection. It is about moving from a place where you recognize that you are responsible for the quality of your relationship, for the love that you are creating and connecting with this person. And so therefore, it's not about waiting to see whether they make the first move in the way that you want. It is about truly choosing to love and connect in every moment. And ultimately, that's what we want. But because we're so afraid of the other person not doing the same, by our default automatic conditioning that began as a child, we show up from an opposite place unconsciously that is actually from a place of fear and disconnection, which thus creates more disconnection and fear. So it's really, really important that no matter where you are in the relationship cycle, you recognize that you have a choice as to how you approach that specific phase of the cycle. You have a choice to meet you and your partner with where you are in the overarching relationship cycle. None of the phases are wrong. In fact, you only allow yourself to move into another phase of the cycle, the one that you would prefer to be in, by allowing yourself to be fully where you are. In order to do that, you have to be conscious and aware of where you are, and the only way that you will actually enjoy the process is when you recognize that you have a choice with approaching that phase from love versus fear. It is much more enjoyable, I promise, to come from love. So for instance, if you're breaking up with someone right now, you can still approach that completion and breakup with love and respect for both of you and for the relationship and for all of the experiences. Telling yourself that you're a failure, that this should never have happened, that you shouldn't be going through this, that someone needs to be at the blame or to blame about the demise of the relationship is coming from a place of fear and protection. There's nothing wrong with you. Relationships end. Some of them aren't meant to last forever. And you can have an incredible post-separation relationship with an ex, even with lots of boundaries around the time that you spend with each other, etc. You can even have a beautiful, loving post-separation relationship with a person without ever even physically seeing them again. Even communicating with them on the phone or on a call, on video, or however it is that you communicate with each other, even through text. You could never say a single word to them, but have a loving, respectful, amazing relationship with them, with the way that you think about them, the energy you send to them, the way you think about the relationship you've had in the past, the way you respect yourself and that person for what you learned. When you do that, you set yourself up for success in future relationships, and not even just romantic, across the board, because the truth is, all of our relationships affect each other. So we really learn in one relationship and we then apply what we learn, either an expansive learning or a protective learning, and we then show up in an unconscious or a conscious way, applying those learnings in our other relationships. And that's why at Relate Higher, we're so focused on really sharing about all relationships, even though romantic relationships can give us so much information, because that's where we tend to have the most conditioning, and that's where these incongruence within us, this conflict between love and fear, it shows up most dominantly and obviously. So we focus a lot on romantic relationships, but really and truly this can be applied to every relationship, and it affects every part of your life, because all of our life is made up of relationships. So your choice is to come from love as best as you can, and that's where your awareness is needed. When you have awareness and it's expanded, you're checking yourself. You're checking and feeling into and seeing what is happening from the other person's point of view, what's happening within your relationship. And you are in relationship with people, whether you're actually in a committed, long-term, I will be your partner relationship. We're all in relationship with each other. So it's important to recognize that being in a conscious relationship can happen at any stage of the relationship cycle, and it will be the thing that moves you into other phases of the relationship cycle in a faster, more enjoyable way. And it completely changes your experience. It sets you up for successful relationships even when they end. It sets you up for successful relationships with other people in other areas. So we really want to learn what it means to be in a conscious relationship so that we can start practicing conscious relationship with the people in our life. With that said, I want to remind everyone that we have opened the School of Conscious Relationships and Conscious Relating. This is where you will learn how to move from unconscious relationship dynamics into conscious relationship and conscious relating. This is where you learn how to set up a conscious relationship container, which we explained to you in the previous episode, which is our structure and process for being in conscious relationship. You'll also learn how to be in a conscious relationship with yourself, and you'll also learn how to meet every phase of the relationship cycle and every relationship area in your life, as well as conscious community in general over there. You'll get all of the education you need, as well as coaching, conscious relationship coaching. You can either watch other people being coached, or you can come and get your questions answered, your relationship challenges answered. You can receive conscious relationship coaching so that you can help yourself shift and expand your perspective and find other possibilities that come from love, awareness, and intention. And finally, you also get to experience our conscious relationship events, which is an opportunity for you to experience and practice relating with other people who are also committed to conscious relationship. To find out more about the school, head to relatehigher.com/school. And second announcement before we dive into the rest of this episode is that next week I am running a live masterclass for our community all about creating thriving relationships across your life. And this masterclass is for you so that you can learn the 7 essential ingredients we all need to create these thriving, successful relationships across our lives. Now, I'm also going to be sharing with you the limiting cultural narratives that we all have that keep us stuck in limiting and unconscious relationship dynamics. We'll also be exploring protective patterns and how they show up in our relationships and stop our relational needs and desires being met. And finally, you'll be able to experience and watch conscious relationship coaching so that you understand how conscious relationship coaching can support you in your relationships and help you increase your awareness, step into love, and move with intention in your relationships. So to find out more about the masterclass, head to relatehigher.com/masterclass. And if you're listening to this episode at some point in the future, I recommend that you still check out relatehigher.com/masterclass, as that page will guide you to either a replay for this masterclass or a future masterclass that we're running that you can also have access to. I'm so excited to see you all there. Okay, back to today's episode. So how do we start and practice a conscious relationship? Well, we want to now get to a point where we have enough understanding of what a conscious relationship is that we want to now invite another person into a conscious relationship with us. Now, this can be in any area of your life, but to make it easier for you, because it can feel kind of intimate and vulnerable to invite someone into a conscious relationship, I want you to think about either a romantic partner or someone who's really close to you, like a best friend or maybe a really close family member. And I want you just to imagine going through the process that I'm sharing with you today so that you can start thinking about how you could apply this in your own life. So first, let's deal with how to start a conscious relationship. There are 3 essential ingredients to starting a conscious relationship that I want you all to think about. The first is you really want to be clear with yourself on what your intentions are for that relationship. What are you most hoping to create with that person and experience? Why this relationship with them? What is your vision for that relationship? I really want you to take some time to feel into that and even consider that question, because it is often a question that we don't really ask ourselves. And even for those of us who are asking this question, we tend to filter that through what is actually realistic or what this other person is willing to agree to. And instead, I want you to start with the undiluted version and just get to know whether there is still a real lack of clarity within you, or whether there's actually more specifics than you really realized there were. And this isn't to say that this relationship that you're inviting the person into is going to meet all of that vision and all of those needs and desires, because it won't. It will be another version of your version. And that's a beautiful thing, because you're going to get what's right for both you and the other person. But we have to start from a place of really honoring our needs and desires and vision and understanding what they are, because that's the only thing that allows you to have the conversation with the other person from a place of truth, and also to put yourself in a position to collaborate with that other person. So we've got to start with some self-reflection first. What is it we're really wanting to create here? What do I want to create with this person? What am I really needing within this relationship area or this relationship in my life? And just write it out without filters and start there. The second thing you need to do is you need to make sure that the other person understands why a conscious relationship matters and how it can support them and your relationship. So I highly recommend you refer them to this podcast so that they can start diving into the episodes, but you will need to be able to sell them on the idea. They're going to want to know, why are you interested in a conscious relationship? And so I want you to ask yourself, why does being in a conscious relationship matter to you? Why is it something that you want to try? Now, when you answer this question, you might want to reflect upon the experiences you've had in relationships so far, how they have maybe failed when it comes to how you really want to feel in a relationship, and perhaps even meeting your definition for what a successful relationship is. That's a very powerful way to invite another person in, because as they consider your story, they will reflect on their story and start to notice the same patterns. So for instance, if I was inviting someone into a conscious relationship, rather than telling them what a conscious relationship is, I'm going to start with explaining why it matters to me, why I started to look for other ways of being in relationship. So here's an example. The reason that I really care about conscious relationship and learning about conscious relationship is because I realized that it really truly was not about finding the right person or the right people to be in relationship with. I truly believed that that was the solution up until a certain point in my life. And so prior to having this realization, I went from relationship, partner to partner, friend to friend, community to community, just trying to find the right people, gather the right people to be in relationship with in the way that I truly desired, which for me was to be meaningfully connected, to be committed to each other's purpose and potential, to come from a place of safety and security, all the good things that most of us really want and I believe are really essential for successful relationships. But I still found that I was coming up against myself, these patterns, these behaviors that would lead me to disconnecting, to hiding, withdrawing, to not showing up in a way that would allow me to have the meaningful connection that I desired. And so pointing the finger at the people I was in a relationship with was a really easy protective shield, right? It stopped me from really looking at myself, which was where all my power was. Now, I also experienced relationships where I had amazing partners, people who wanted to be in relationship, were committed to meaningful connection, really truly to as best as possible, coming from a place of love, etc. And yet we still found that we would grow apart, that there would be conflict, that we would disconnect, that we would hide from one another, that we really weren't educated on what the work is that's required in a relationship. So there was just this fantasy and illusion that, okay, well, this just means that this relationship isn't right for us. And I'm talking about all kinds of relationships. It could be jobs, teams, friendships, family relationships, and of course, romantic relationships. So in the back of my mind, and most likely the other person I was relating with, was this idea that if there were any problems, challenges, conflict, growing apart, then this meant that we just weren't meant to be together, that we were meant to always be on the same page. And that was the only way to be the right person and to create a fulfilling relationship. This sent me in an endless search for finding the right people, but never actually learning what those skills were that create connection and that create love and that allow us to go deeper and deeper into intimacy and connection and our relationship over time. So after enough times doing this, I began to realize that maybe I needed to find another solution. Maybe there was another way. And so life led me to really learning from people and learning about what the work in relationships looks like, learning and normalizing that conflict and growing apart and challenges and these protective patterns are all very normal and happen automatically. And so what we need to do instead is meet ourselves and learn how to work with ourselves as humans, learn how to work with each other as humans. And then this set me up for success because I started to solve the right problem. It was not about attracting the right partner, the right friend, the right job, the right team, etc. It was about learning relationship skills that create conscious relationships. I learned through that we need to be in a conscious relationship with ourselves, that we need to be in a conscious relationship with the other person and approach wherever we are in the relationship consciously. I learned that being conscious is about actively using your consciousness to shift the way you're approaching the relationship and what you're creating and how you're behaving and what you're thinking from fear back to love. I learned that it was about really being aware of myself, really being aware of the other person and the relationship, and moving with intention in our interactions, but also in setting up our relationship and stepping into that conscious relationship volume of our relationship. So when we share a story like that and we share why the way we've been doing things previously isn't working, and it doesn't need to be because it's not going well. Like for instance, when I had this realization, the relationship was going well that I was thinking about. It was just that I wanted to go deeper, and I believed that I could only go deeper through being with another person who could give me that depth. But I didn't know the skills for going deeper within myself and within relationship with another person. I had to learn the skills. And so if you share your story like that, the person will then think about their own experience with relationships, realize that they either want to go deeper or they want to improve. There's something that they desire, and this is going to show them what the pathway forward is. And then they're going to need to educate themselves, right? So you can send them to this podcast, you can get them to do their own research, you can invite them to become a member of the School of Conscious Relationships, and you can practice conscious relationship together privately and also in our community. So education is really, really important to invite another person in, and it starts with your story and just for yourself as well, really understanding why you're here and devoting this time and attention to your relationships. And then thirdly, we need a very specific opening of the relationship into conscious relationship. So if you are already in a relationship with someone that you now want to practice conscious relationship with because you recognize that you're not going to have the depth and the connection and the improvement and the nurturing that you need without being in conscious relationship and doing the work together, then you now need a symbolic moment between you where you agree to step into conscious relationship and do the work together. That's really what conscious relationship is. It's doing the work. And this moment, this symbolic moment together between you is something that you then step into. So I really recommend having an opening together in your relationship. If you're starting a new relationship, this is kind of easy because you can just start the relationship with this opening. For instance, in my last romantic relationship, I had these tools, I had this knowledge, this education, this conscious relationship foundation and structure, and the conscious relationship container that I taught in the previous episode. And so we began our relationship opening the relationship for the first time from day one using a conscious relationship opening practice that I created. This meant that we had clear agreements together, clear intentions, and we had a symbolic moment where we opened the relationship together. And then we had beautiful practices beyond that to nurture the relationship in a conscious relationship way that allows us to practice conscious relationship. So they're the three things that I recommend for starting a conscious relationship. The first is understanding what you need and desire and want from this relationship. The second is really inviting the other person in through sharing your reasons for wanting to practice and do the work in conscious relationship together. And then sharing with them education and resources to support their own understanding. This is the work. And thirdly, opening the relationship up from the day that you decide that you want to be in conscious relationship together with a very specific opening practice together. Now, these are all pieces that I teach in the Conscious Relationship Container process, which is the first course that we're teaching in the School of Conscious Relationships and Conscious Relating. So if you want to learn more about the practicals and the specifics of how to do this, head to relatehigher.com/school. And for the final part of today's episode, we're going to explore how to practice conscious relationship. So now we know how to start a conscious relationship together. We now want to move into what do we do once we've started. Now, there are two really important pieces that will help you practice conscious relationship with another person. The first is you want to have very specific processes that you and the other person have agreed to help you communicate, to help you connect, and to help you collaborate together. These processes will be almost rituals that you have together. They will be periodic agreements that you have to practice conscious relationship and create that connection, communication, and collaboration together. These happen periodically so that even when you think, everything's fine in our relationship, we don't really need to do this, you will do it anyway, because often under the surface, unconsciously, there are things there between us that we need to be aware of that help us to feel more deeply connected together, that help us to feel more loving of each other and ourselves, that help us to be able to step into that collaborative energy and to really feel that we are meaningfully connected and communicating well together. When you ignore this and you just think, everything's fine, it's kind of like with mindset, whether it's about business or money or another area of life where your mind has a lot of frustration about. When you stop doing the mindset work because you've noticed some progress and you're feeling like everything's going great, then at some point things will start to not be great again. And you've usually stopped doing that mindset work. And then you've got to go back and you've got to build it up again. Rather than just making an agreement with yourself, let's always do the mindset work and let's just keep compounding and building on that. Instead, we have to keep going through the same cycle instead of moving like this. So that's why we want processes. And secondly, we want tools, because we can have processes which are going to help clean up a lot of the disconnection between us and keep us thriving together in partnership together. But then there will be experiences, there'll be triggers, there'll be moments, spontaneous things that happen in our relationship, and we're not going to know how to approach them. So you want to have tools like conscious communication. And these tools, conscious conflict, understanding how to consciously approach triggers and transmute triggers, these tools help you to deal with these moments and experiences and conflict and challenges in the moment. You will learn how to approach these experiences consciously. So you've got the tool belt, and when they happen, you can go to the tool belt, and hopefully you've learned the tools already so you know what they're about, and then you can draw on them as you need throughout your relationship. These two pieces, the processes and the tools, are what help you practice conscious relationship. This is the work. And we have some incredible tools and incredible processes that I can firsthand tell you how incredibly powerful they are, that we teach as part of the Conscious Relationship Container. So if you haven't yet joined the School of Conscious Relationships, I highly recommend you join us now so that you can start learning these tools, these processes, and how to start a conscious relationship with any person in your life right away today. Once again, you can head to relatehigher.com/school and come and join us. Don't forget that next week we have our first relationship masterclass that we're teaching at Relate Higher, and you can join us at relatehigher.com/masterclass, all to help you create thriving relationships this year, no matter where you are across your life. All right, my beautiful friends, I'll see you in our next episode. Goodbye. Thank you for listening to Relate Higher, your go-to resource for learning how to consciously approach all of your relationships. To deepen your learning and practice, make sure you're subscribed to receive the Relate Higher community newsletter. This is a weekly newsletter sent to you every Monday, providing further coaching and education to support your relationships. Subscribe at relatehigher.com/community. And if you haven't yet left a 5-star review for the podcast, we ask that you please do that now so that this podcast can reach other listeners who also want to learn and practice conscious higher relating. Because remember, the more people who learn, the better relationships we all enjoy.